He said it so calmly, like it was already decided. He and my stepson were spending Christmas with his ex because the boy needed his real mother. I remember the exact moment, the way the fork paused in my hand, the way the room felt suddenly smaller. When I did not respond, he added the final line, almost bored, "If you do not like it, divorce me." I did not cry. I did not raise my voice. I looked at the calendar on the wall, at the red circle around Christmas, and felt something settle inside me. 4 years, I had refused the Japan transfer. 4 years, I had chosen this marriage over myself. That night, I opened my laptop instead. 1 week later, he came home earlier than usual. His voice shook when he called my name. By then, my decision had already changed everything. I married him when I was 27, old enough to know love does not look like movies, young enough to believe patience could fix neglect. I stepped into his life quietly, into a house that still carried traces of his past marriage. Photos were gone, but habits remained. His son watched me carefully at first, then learned something from his father's silences. I became useful, not essential. I adjusted my life around theirs without announcing it. School pickups, quiet dinners, parent meetings where I sat one chair back. When decisions were made, they were already finished by the time they reached me. I told myself this was compromise. I told myself families take time. At work, I was different. I handled international accounts, complex negotiations, decisions that moved people across borders. My name carried weight in meeting rooms. At home, it softened, shrank, became optional. When I spoke, conversations drifted past me. When I disagreed, I was told I was overthinking. The Japan transfer came up every year. Each time he frowned and said it would be disruptive. Bad timing. Not good for the child. I said yes to staying without realizing what I was saying no to. Somewhere along the way, my silence taught him a lesson I never meant to teach, that I would always bend. That Christmas conversation did not break me. It clarified me. I realized I had been living as a supporting character in my own life, applauded for flexibility, rewarded with disregard. And once I saw that pattern clearly, I could not unsee it. After that night, the house sounded different. Doors closed a little softer, conversations ended a little faster. He stopped asking where I was going, started assuming I would adjust. When he spoke about Christmas plans, he did not look at me. He spoke to the wall, to his phone, to the space I no longer occupied in his decisions. His son followed his lead without realizing it. When I set plates on the table, he thanked his father. When I reminded him about homework, he waited for confirmation from someone else. Small things, barely noticeable unless you were the one being erased. His ex's name began appearing more often, slipped into sentences like a familiar song. He said she understood the child better. He said it was easier with her. Each time there was a pause afterward, as if he expected me to object. I did not. My silence made him bolder. One evening, he mentioned selling my car to simplify expenses. He said it casually, like a suggestion already approved. I watched his face carefully, the way his eyes stayed relaxed, confident I would not push back. I smiled and asked what time dinner would be ready. At night, I lay awake listening to his breathing, steady and untroubled. I realized something unsettling. He was not being cruel. He was being comfortable. He believed I had nowhere else to go, no life that did not revolve around his convenience. That belief grew quietly between us, fed by every nod, every pause, every moment I chose peace over protest. And the more certain he became, the more invisible I felt, like furniture moved only when it was in the way. The turning point did not arrive with an argument. It came on a quiet afternoon, standing in my office, staring at an email I had ignored for years. The subject line had not changed. Tokyo Regional Director position, final offer. I read it slowly this time, without imagining his reaction, without calculating inconvenience. Just facts. Salary. Authority. A life measured by my choices again. I realized then how carefully I had been trained to doubt myself. Not through insults, but through expectation. I was expected to wait, to adapt, to stay. He never asked me to give up anything. He simply assumed I would. And I had confirmed that assumption again and again. That evening he told me his ex had already booked flights. He said it like good news. When I nodded, relief crossed his face. He mistook my calm for agreement. I felt something settle into place, clean and final. I replied to the email before I could reconsider. I accepted the transfer. There was no rush of triumph, no dramatic music. Just a quiet sense of alignment, like stepping back into my own body. The decision did not change him. It changed me. For the first time, I was not reacting. I was acting. I understood then that revenge did not have to be loud or visible to be real. Sometimes, the most powerful move is choosing a future that no longer includes the people who benefited from your silence. I planned the way I handled negotiations at work, quietly, thoroughly, without emotion leaking into decisions. I reviewed contracts first. My employment agreement covered relocation, housing, and legal support. I spoke to a lawyer recommended by my company, not to threaten but to understand. Knowledge has a way of restoring balance. At home, I changed nothing outwardly. I cooked dinners. I asked about school schedules. I let him believe the house was steady. That illusion gave me time. I documented expenses, contributions, timelines. I was not preparing for war. I was preparing for accuracy. I opened a separate account and transferred only what was mine. No sudden withdrawals. No drama that could be used against me later. I forwarded important emails to a private address. I scanned documents and labeled them carefully. Each step felt unemotional, almost boring. That was the point. He mistook my calm for dependence. He did not see me selling furniture I had paid for, listing items during lunch breaks. He did not notice when I packed winter coats into suitcases labeled work supplies. I traveled often. Suitcases did not raise suspicion. There was no speech rehearsed in the mirror. No fantasy of his regret. My focus stayed on timing and precision. Silent revenge does not announce itself. It moves through systems, paperwork, and planning. By the time he sensed change, everything essential was already secured. Not taken from him, not hidden. Simply reclaimed. I was not taking something away. I was returning to a version of myself that existed long before I learned to make my life smaller. I left on a morning that looked ordinary enough to be ignored. The sky was pale, the street quiet, the kind of day that did not feel important until later. I did not wake him. I did not leave a note. Everything that needed to be said had already been said in choices, not words. At the airport, my phone vibrated once. A message asking where I was. I turned it face down and watched the city slide past the window instead. The plane lifted smoothly without resistance. I remember thinking how fitting that felt. The consequences unfolded the way consequences always do, slowly then all at once. His first call came that evening. Confused. Annoyed. Then another, sharper this time. When I did not answer, his tone changed. Panic has a sound, even through a phone left unanswered. By the time he realized I had taken the Japan transfer, his comfort had already cracked. School schedules clashed. His ex did not stay longer than planned. Real life returned, unassisted. I felt no rush of victory. Just clarity. Sitting in my temporary apartment in Tokyo, I unpacked in silence, folding clothes into drawers that belonged only to me. The city outside hummed with movement and purpose. Revenge arrived quietly, disguised as progress. I did not confront him. I did not demand acknowledgement. I allowed the absence to speak. He lost nothing he had not assumed would always be there. I gained something far rarer, the satisfaction of watching consequences unfold without my intervention. The fallout did not look dramatic from the outside. It looked like inconvenience. Like late calls to relatives. Like explanations repeated too often, each version slightly altered to protect his image. People noticed the gaps even when they did not comment on them. Absence has a way of raising questions without accusing anyone directly. His family reached out first, cautious and polite. They asked if everything was all right, if there had been a misunderstanding. I replied with courtesy, nothing more. I did not correct their assumptions. I did not supply a villain. Silence allowed them to form their own conclusions, and those conclusions carried more weight than any accusation I could have made. At work, my reputation sharpened. Distance clarified perception. I was no longer the flexible one, the accommodating presence. I was the decision-maker. Colleagues listened differently when I spoke. I listened differently to myself. He tried to explain himself to me once, late at night, across time zones. He said things had spiraled. That he had not expected this outcome. I realized then how often people confuse expectation with entitlement. The real stakes were never the marriage. They were my self-worth. How many times I had taught others how to treat me by what I tolerated. That lesson matters beyond this story. People do not need to see themselves in my marriage to recognize the pattern. They only need to remember the last time they stayed quiet to keep peace, and what that silence cost them. Months passed, and the quiet satisfaction settled like a calm tide. I did not need congratulations, and I did not seek validation. The transfers were complete, the house organized, the papers filed. What remained was a sense of balance I had not felt in years, a life aligned with my own choices, not the expectations of others. I reflected often on the subtle lessons embedded in every small betrayal, every unspoken slight. Each moment had been a test of patience, a measure of endurance. I learned that strength does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers in measured action, in preparation, in the calm reclamation of what is yours. I had practiced that whisper and, finally, it spoke loud enough to be heard without words. Future plans no longer required permission. I considered opportunities abroad, travels I had shelved for convenience, career moves I had delayed out of obligation. My world expanded not through rebellion, but through thoughtful, deliberate steps. Even the people I loved most, friends, colleagues, sensed the change. They treated me with a quiet respect that comes from watching someone claim themselves without drama or spectacle. And him? He learned without lecture. He confronted the absence, the boundaries, and silently he recalibrated. I smiled, holding a cup of coffee on a balcony overlooking the city lights. The night was still, the hum of life around me uninterrupted. I finally understood. Revenge is not about destruction. It is about restoration. And for the first time in years I felt complete.